Everyone. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. It's Hump Day. We're getting late in the day here, and it's one of those situations where if you're the Arkansas Razorbacks, fans of the Hogs, certainly the basketball program, took a sigh of relief when not one but two commitment announcements out of the portal. You felt like that day was never coming. It all happened yesterday. But just like with anything else, especially when you ask a coach about their feelings about something like that, it's one of those things where, well, we'll celebrate this and enjoy it tonight, and then we're back to work, back to the drawing board tomorrow. And John Calipari and his staff that's the mindset. They're still going. There's still more to do here. Even though we're starting to get a better picture of what this roster looks like, we're going to go through a lot today. We'll have a little bit of intel, but one of the first things I want to do when we had we had a recap show yesterday, had two shows, but after the news dropped within a couple of hours of each other, Nick Pringle, 6'10", forward center out of South Carolina, his popped first. And then it was Malik Ewan, 6'11", forward center out of Florida State. So we've been talking about it for the longest time. Those guys were coming on board. I did a recap show talking about both, and so you can check that out. I did that yesterday evening. If you haven't seen it already, go check that out, because we're not going to talk as much about them today as we did on that. So if you want to hear more about that, do it. But we're moving on now. We got to talk about what's coming up. And visitors on campus. I want to start with that because I've reported for days now, beginning with Arkansas would have as many as 4 visitors in a 2-week span that began with this past weekend once the dead period ended, and would run through the next 2 weekends. So you'd have 2 midweeks in between. And we know Malik Ewan has been on campus. That's one. Then I had intel. I got it, was told that Arkansas would have as many as 2 visitors, maybe by midweek, but certainly this week. So that leaves open the question. One of the things I teased with coming on here is, could Arkansas, Ewan's visit's over, all the big stuff happened yesterday. Now we're moving on, right? We got to assume the staff is. They could have a visitor on, if not on campus now, maybe arriving later today, but at least one more for this week. That's what I was told. So keep an eye on that. We're gonna go through a bunch of names. We're going to talk about different things and how this could fill out. And do you add 1, 2, or 3 more? We're going to get into that. We're going to look at the retention. That may end up being the big splash, is the retention. So when you don't hear a lot, that might be good news when you're trying to retain players that made you an Elite 8 quality team, and you're bringing back guys that aren't end of bench kind of guys. They were, right there in the fire making that happen. So we got a lot to talk about today, but just the visitor updates, just keep an eye on it, because we could learn. It could leak out. I can't leak it out, but we could learn who's there and how soon it is. But then I'm going to go through some names. We'll just keep an eye on a lot of this. Some of these we've already talked about, but let's deconstruct some stuff and build it back up. I think the roster structure now becomes more clear when you add the 2 big men. That's obvious. But let's start with retention. If you're keeping Trevor Brazile as your feature 4 this next time around, you didn't have that with Adu Thero and Brazile. It was Thero's job, and Brazile was kind of the backup. And we saw how that went until thrust into a, better put up or shut up now. Thero's out and Brazile put up. You've got to think you're retaining him, and it's looking like you will, that he's going to be your primary, option at the 4 spot with the ability to help at the 5. You look at guys like Carter Knox and Billy Richmond, do those guys bring enough versatility to be more than your top 2 at the wing spot at the 3? We know Billy Richmond got opportunities playing the 2, playing on the 1, on the ball. That was a little bit emergency, right? You no longer had Boogie Flan. DJ Wagner's going to have to check out of the game every once in a while. Billy Richmond, some of those situations. Maybe Carter Knox can give you some more small ball 3-4, be another wing on the court playing the small ball 4. Maybe he's got enough in his development, being trusted with his decision making on, creating shots, that you might see some at the 2. So you may have some versatility to there. DJ Wagner's the one guy that we've been less solid about coming back more and more lately, because you're hearing less and less that he might leave for this reason or that. And we've been very candid about that. But DJ Wagner brings the versatility. He can help you on the ball. It wasn't as good with him in the moments, in the stretches of games where he was off the ball, but there were some bright spots there at times. Not as much nearly as when he had to be the primary handler and he took over the reins of that. But you have multiple players here. We went through it. Brazil 4-5, Knox 2-3, and small ball 4. Billy Richmond, all we've seen is really a 3, and Helper at the 1 as a 2. I typically think as a 2 as guys that are true shot creators at multiple levels, and he hasn't displayed the ability to knock down threes. He's got a little mid-range shot he likes to get to, but he's mostly a slasher. So I don't know there, but even DJ, a 1-2 combo. So you've got some ways that you could shift your retention around and make that add to this roster. And who, plus, in addition, from the high school ranks. Having said that, you're also, when you look at those guys who are these all primary role kind of guys? And I think they are. I think Trevor Brazile has all league potential if he plays like he did down the final stretch, the last 9 games. 11.3 points, over 9 rebounds per game. He was knocking down threes, so he could stretch the floor. He blocked shots. You know that he has his entire career, so he can be a rim protector and help you at the five. But the fact that even though he's not a physical player, became a more reliable, dependable rebounder, dealing with physicality as part of that, you feel good about. This is the kind of guy that if he went in the portal would be a splash addition for anybody else. So maybe that's splash retention. I think Carter Knox is. I've said I've earmarked him for an all-league potential, barring a sophomore slump, the progress he's made, an all-league potential that I wouldn't even rule out first-team All-SEC as a reasonable path for him. It's a splash to have a guy like that. Other teams are trying to get that. Arkansas, if they keep all these guys, we think they will. DJ's still the one that's at times a bit murky, only because I haven't gotten to the level I gave it percentages where I was with the other guys, but it's trending okay right now, so let's keep our eye on it. But all 4 of them, DJ is an all-league guy. I don't know about that. I couldn't rule out potentially as an all-league defender. Same with a Billy Richmond III. Certainly these guys should have impactful roles and build on what they did last year in terms of minutes, role, production. Now they've got to go out and do it. Doesn't mean they couldn't have a backslide, but just through your retention, you've got a splash effect that other teams have. When we look at their portal ads, you say, oh, that's a significant addition. Well, they may not be in the same spot Arkansas is, not only having quality players, but quality players that helped you be an Elite 8 worthy team. I know they didn't make it to the Elite 8. We all know they should have. And we all know what these players did to help Arkansas finish the season the right way. They were all consistently getting better. It wasn't a game here and a game there. They were consistently reliable during that stretch. When you lost your 2 leading scorers, they were really out of the mix at that point. So we started again with retention. Some of this is repetitive, but then I look at the guys you bring in from the high school ranks. Darius Acuff Jr. to me is a day 1 starter at the 1. Day 1 starter at the 1. DJ, they're gonna have to figure that out because they're and share duties. And DJ, play off the ball when they're on the court together. Maybe there's a vision for DJ to handle the ball some and Acuff be on the floor and off the ball, but Acuff's coming in as a primary 1. And here's a guy that could have the kind of impact that Boogie was having, if not better, before he got hurt, or a Jeremiah Fears or a Trey Johnson. In other words, this could be an all-league guy. You're earmarking. You're talking about guys like Brazile, if he maintains the consistency on how he was playing, could be an all-league type of guy. Carter Knox, an all-league type of guy. Darius Acuff Jr. has that feel. He has that all-league freshman, one-and-done, new freshman smell of that kind of guy that could do the new car smell. Be that kind of guy. Why not? Can't rule it out from Malik Thomas at the 2. There are concerns about Arkansas when you look at the retention in these 2 guys. So even no matter how good these 2 guys are coming out of high school, even though in Thomas's case, over, nearly 8.5 3-point attempts per game at overtime elite, shooting it at over 38%, that looks really good. Will it translate? I talked about the other 4 retention pieces. Trevor Brazile's been a quality 3-point shooter, 36% for his career, somewhere in there, and started making more and more, had multiple games toward the end of the season where he had 2 or 3 per game. But you need more than that when you look at the fact that you lost your top 3-point shooters in efficiency on good volume in Big Z and Nelly Davis and Boogie Fland. Those were really your top guys when you look at it. In Fland's numbers, we talk about those before injury, obviously. Not the 1 of 10 he did coming back and having that playing off the bench role and not a primary handler, not his natural feel for the game type of thing. But you lost that. So you're trying to figure out how you're going to make that work. So when we look at those 2 freshmen and the 4 retention pieces, there's all league stuff there, and it's mostly backcourt guys with the exception of Brazil. So it raises questions. With that, just those 6, how do you address 3-point shooting and improving where you weren't so good last year? Plus, you've lost your 3 most efficient guys on volume. They're gone. I just went through their names. So you're looking at that. Yeah, you've got all league stuff. Yeah, you've got primary cut type of guys. But where's that? You've also, in those 6, only have 1 frontline guy. That's Trevor Brazil. And he's a good one to have, but only 1. So there's some question marks there. Last year, it wasn't just 3-point shooting and lack of physicality. It was also lack of depth on the front line. Well, still looking at those 6, all those questions are still there. But you added the 2 big men. That takes up some of your physicality questions. Nick Pringle, hello. You got big bodies in both of them, 6'10", 6'11". They're both 230 plus. They're north of 230. Hello. You had rebounding problems on that front line. Part of that was lack of physicality. Part of it was, Big Z at 7'2". That wasn't in his bag, man. But when you combine the production that Pringle and Ewan bring, you're getting back. You're looking at the potential to be a much better rebounding team. In Arkansas, you got to get better on defensive rebounds, close out those defensive possessions. Arkansas really struggled with that. And regardless of how that plays out, you're going to have to get better as an offensive rebounding team to help, increase your possessions and then limit that. If you're increasing the amount of your possessions by getting offensive rebounds, you're limiting the other team's offensive possessions, which makes the defensive rebounding part still important. But the fewer the other team has possessions, it means they're really struggling on the other end to keep you off the offensive glass. You in last year, over 3 offensive rebounds per game. So it's not just the total rebounds. You got better there. What are you lacking there, though? You've given up some rim protection. That's what Big Z and Jonas, they do collectively much better rim protection, shot blockers, shot alterers. These guys being bigger body-wise and with Pringle, throwing his weight around in there, you also have an element of some rim protection, not in shot blocking, but just carving out space, moving bodies around, and making drivers think twice about coming at you. Not just because they're worried about you blocking their shot, but taking a hard hit or just hitting a wall, hitting a big body. You got to maneuver around that stuff. It's not as easy. It's easy to get into Big Z and push him around, even though he blocked 2 shots a game. How many easy buckets did he give up per game? A lot more than 2. So there's more than one way to look at rim protection. True rim protection, yeah, that's lacking when you're talking shot blocking and altering shots because of the threat of a shot block. So there are some things. Now we've got 8. Those 4 in retention. Let's assume Arkansas keeps them all. We'll deal with what happens later if it doesn't seem to happen. 2 freshmen that are coming in that are going to factor into the main rotation, and then the 2 big men. That gets you to 8. So we know Arkansas signed 2 other players. I saved them for last for a reason. Isaiah Seeley and Kareem Rattal. If you look at the extra players outside the top 9 rotation last year, none of those guys could impact a game. None of those guys were brought in to be relied upon for depth if you had attrition with your top 9. A top 9, we question that. You're not deep enough, period. And when we looked at the front line numbers, it was even worse, and that's where most of your attrition was, front line. So you had double whammies with how you did that. When you look at Seeley and Rattal, both of those guys have done more resume-wise and bring more in terms of height and size. Remember, all those guys were guards. Seeley's a 6'7" wing. He can play the 1 through 3, much higher rated than anybody they brought in last year. Rattal's a grown man, 20 years old, and has been playing professionally in Lithuania. So it raises all kinds of questions. There's been talk maybe he redshirts and they want to develop him. Seeley's, are these guys just luxuries? And this is how you go from 9 to 11. And so you're really taking a top 9. Arkansas's at 8 right now. We just went through those. And if those guys are truly on the outside looking in, are they just there to help you finish out a game or deal with foul trouble, and they're good enough where you trust them to do some of that and have a role if needed, or even just have a role period. It's a small one in year one while they're there. That's a possibility. It's also a possibility that they're on the outside looking in like those other guys last year, except for if something crazy happened and you absolutely had to use them, you could, and you didn't feel like you could with those other guys. Maybe there's that. We just don't know that for sure. But remember, Sealy 6'7", Artal 6'9". It's going to be tempting to it's a nice luxury to have that kind of height and some of the things they bring to the court. Whereas those others, I'll call them, outside the top 9 last year, they weren't that. They weren't that. Period. I never thought they were going to see the floor, and they didn't. Okay, so who knows exactly how you have that earmarked? But let's just say for now, let's just take it off the table that they're going to factor in for now, so we can go through some names and make it make sense. Let's just say they're not being counted on. So they're part of the 10 that you've signed, but maybe those two are not. So you're at 8, and you're trying to figure out, where do you go from there? If you go from 9 to 11 and you're at 8, that means you could go as many as 3. We haven't really even talked about adding 3 more guys. We kind of have, but we haven't spent so much time on it. I've always felt like 1 or 2 more, but that was wondering how Sealy and Artel would fit and help as needed. But let's put them off the table. So that means maybe 3 more. Maybe only 2 more. So you're trying to figure out what would be the path of adding 2 or 3 more. So there's more than one way to look at this. We know 2 big men that you had to have, regardless of retention and what you signed in the high school class, had to be accomplished, because the high school class and retention didn't solve any of that. Even Trevor in Brazil, if you keep him, is a help at the 5. You needed 2 big men that could be 5s. I'm not so sure that Pringle and Ewan can't spend some time on the court together because of Ewan's versatility and because they're kind of yin-yang. One's offense, one's more defense. There may be a way there's some of that. But let's look at, if you add 2 or even 3 more, how do you do that? So there's one of the things I'm going to do, one of the things I tweeted yesterday, talked about it in the recap show yesterday, is I see someone saying Ian Jackson is an ex-commitment. We're going to talk about Ian. But one of the things I was doing was I was making the comparison. I knew that Arkansas was going to get Ewan announced soon after the Pringle announcement. And so I put a tweet out, do good things come in pairs, a la Noah's Ark, 2 big men. I'm trying to, every species, every animal, there was 2 of them, right? So today's theme is going to be Cal's Ark, and it's Arkansas. It's a play on Arkansas too. You're welcome. We're going to go through 2s. I'm going to do this by 2s. So let's get started. 2 known Kentucky Cal connected guys that are in the portal. And where could they help you? They could help you on the front line, couldn't they? We talked about what the issues could still be. 3-point shooting and, and rim protection and front court depth. Still, front court depth. Because right now, with Pringle, Ewan, and Brazil, you've got the same 4 or 5 spot depth that you had last year, and it became a problem with attrition. Why not, if you might add 2 or 3 more, go there? 2 known Cal at Kentucky connections, because they played with him there. They played for him there. Not with him. He didn't play. They played for him there. Ugonna Onyenso, the 7-footer, talked about him the last couple of times. I've been told to keep an eye on it. Oh, let's circle back to another visitor, probably this week, or expected this week, and up to 2 more combined with that plus Ewan by weekend after next, by the time that expires. Could he be that 7-footer? Been a when we talk role player, he's been a guy that's never played more than 19 minutes per game, 18 and a half minutes per game in his second year under Cal. Spent the last season at Kansas State with an even smaller role and impacted minutes. But a volume shot blocker, rim protector, and he's a 7-footer. It makes sense. Is it possible that Arkansas is working on that one, or somebody else? Another Cal-related guy that we've talked a lot about. Another guy that can block shots, Damian Collins, could give you depth on that front line. He would be a 4 or 5 kind of tweener guy. Onyenso, more of, really just a 5. But the rim protector, the shot blocker, you don't have either one. So we've talked a lot. This is the 3rd or 4th time I've mentioned both of these names. And they're both connected to Cal because they played for him. There's a relationship there. He's recruited them before. It makes sense. We're naming them by twos. Not that I don't mean it like Cal's arc, they're going to go get both of those guys, but I'm kind of looking at situations by twos right now, staying with the Cal's arc theme because we saw two big men come off the board yesterday. Let's expand it now to more, instead of depth. Let's say it was a Damian Collins and he's helping back up Brazil or back up one of the other fives, the two fives there. Great. Or like in Yenso, have a third center, and he knows he's not going to get the minutes those other guys are. That's what he's used to for a career. All right. Someone threw in here Jordan Burks. Yeah, 6'9". Didn't Burks land somewhere? Did he not? I thought maybe he did, but okay. But Jordan Burks is another guy. There you go. We'll throw his name in there. I thought I saw somewhere that he'd committed somewhere, but maybe not. We'll throw him in there. All right, so let's talk. So that would spoil my Noah's Ark by two or whatever. So let's do the next one. Let's talk splash kind of guys. Now this is where it gets interesting. To me, it seemed obvious Arkansas didn't want a big splash in the backcourt, at least not till now, with guys like Lamar Wilkerson and Jerron Pierre Jr., who they did recruit, who they did talk to. It started all that up. It didn't go nearly as far enough to get to a point where you were trying to upset the apple cart with what you're bringing in and what you think you're keeping in that backcourt. But you still 3-point, in my opinion, you got to check a box to get somewhere in that backcourt some proof of concept from a college guy, a veteran guy, can knock down threes. That's what I think. And I think you got to kick those tires. But even if you're trying to keep Brazil as your focal point at the 4 and that's the guy you're riding with, maybe there's thinking that because you need more depth at a 3-4 kind of spot and put somebody behind him, you don't have as much as you do in the backcourt. Maybe that's where you're really looking at a 3-4 splash kind of guy. And we already have a proof of concept. What is that? Nate Ament, not out of the portal, but that's a splash. That's a 5-star. And I know Cal's been recruiting him really hard since September and for over a year altogether. But the fact that Arkansas hasn't packed up and checked out on that, and I know that's coming from the staff. They're still in it. They think they're still in it. They don't believe they're not. And so that decision could come anytime, I guess. He recently said within the next week or two, so we could see about that. But he checks that box as a guy that can shoot from 3 and at a high clip. That's his superpower. And he's 6'9", pushing 6'10", and could give you that jumbo wing that you could have on the court as a combo, 3-4 combo, have on there with another wing like Carter Knox, 2 other guards, and then a guy like even Brazil when he's getting his 5 minutes, or one of those other big men. So he would be a splash guy. He's the kind of guy that's going to be getting not going to be a backup, not going to be having backup minutes, even if technically he were to come off the bench for a while or be your starter. Which then makes things interesting with Trevor and Bill when he's on but there's a way to do that where Brazil, when he's on the court playing the 5, other guys can get some of their minutes that way, including a guy like Nate Ament. But let's say it's not him. Let's say Arkansas is not getting him. I told you, the NIL offer is crazy strong, and I think that's got Arkansas still in it. You've heard different things. Duke's been the flavor of the last couple of weeks. I told you guys a while back, don't sleep on Tennessee, that they were really going to up their NIL offer game, and now you're hearing more and more about that. That's not something new coming out of my mouth. I think I was the first one on record to say that, but I'm still paying attention to it. I'm not sure where it goes, and I'm not saying Arkansas is getting him. I'm saying he's the proof that Arkansas may be okay with adding a splash guy, maybe even out of the portal at this point. They passed on Keyshawn Hall because they're still playing the Nate Ament game, and we're still playing the Adu Thero game. That's the second part of the proof of concept, Adu Thero, that Arkansas was willing to keep a starter value guy that led the team in scoring and rebounding because they really tried to make it worth his while to stay. So between Ament, even though they're not the same kind of player, they're still your 3-4 jumbo wing, one being more capable defensively of being that 4 on the court for long stretches, Thero, and Ament probably being better offensively, giving you more versatility offensively, and experiment with lineups than maybe Thero was. Either way, that's 2 proofs of concept that maybe Arkansas is okay with bringing a splash kind of name at that 3-4 spot and figuring it out with Brazil and maybe still bring him off the bench. It did not work well with Brazil. Thero was that guy. It wasn't until Thero was out of the picture that Brazil became the Brazil we always thought he could be. So I don't know. I know that staff thinks Brazil was as good as any frontline player in the country once he played the way he did down the stretch. Think about that statement. You know, maybe they didn't 100% believe he was as good as guys like Janai Broom and some of the other ones out there. You know, Cooper Flagg and some of these other guys. But you know that's how they saw him, is right there. So you got to think, aren't they probably earmarking him for that main role at the 4? But some of these other names in that, in how you would see them on the court a lot with big roles, Thero and Ament, suggest maybe not. Maybe they're going to still use him as in tandem with somebody and think they can still get out of him a lot. You know, at the end of the year, he was playing close to 30 minutes, averaging that because he had to, somewhere between 25 to 30. Do they see a path to keep him and do it 20 to 25? Now, Thero's gone and they may not get a minute, but it opens the door. Here we go, back to Cal's arc. Here's 2 names. Jameer Watkins, we're talking a lot about him. Man, that guy would be a monster to bring in. A volume scorer, can get it done everywhere. And is he the most efficient guy from 3? No, but he's respectable from there. He can generate free throw attempts. He's a good rebounder. He'll pass the ball. He's a stats sheet stuffer and a volume scorer. How would you make that work? Brazil could certainly get some of his 5 minutes on the court with Watkins as a 3-4. Maybe there's times when you can move Carter Knox and he's playing some 2 while Malik's not on the court, and you've got Jameer Watkins at the 3 and you've got Brazil at the 4. There's a way to do it, but the thing is, we go through the retention. And the guys you're bringing in out of high school, you got 2 McDonald's All-Americans in retention, and Carter Knox and DJ Wagner. Oh, by the way, a top 25 Jordan Brand All-American and Billy Richmond III. And you've got 2 McDonald's All-American top 10 rated 5 stars, Malik Thomas and Darius A. Cup Jr. You're going to figure out those minutes the more we start talking about adding players, especially if they're not just depth backup players, especially if they're splash kind of guys that you know are going to have big roles. Could Jameer Watkins be a guy that's earmarked for one of these visits in the next couple of weeks? It's been kind of quiet there. Teammates with Ewan at Florida State. Been on Arkansas's campus when the previous staff recruited him, and he committed during his visit. And I told y'all that was a wild situation, and got EPM all sideways, and we had to laugh about it. But he slipped through the fingers and got away. But there are all kinds of things that say, hey, maybe there's something there. People always bring up Darian Williams at Texas Tech. A guy that can beat you inside and out and be a matchup freaking nightmare. He's in the NBA draft, as is Watkins, and you keep an eye on both of those guys. But Williams, you're hearing some first round stuff potentially for him, and if he comes back, there's some other stuff out there. Not a whole lot connected with Arkansas, but Calipari's been known to add guys late and keep something open and intentionally not fill what you think he needs to do because he thinks he can get on something late. So you're always aware of that. How far does Jameer Watkins go with this process? So there's all kinds of ways to feel around on this and look at it. So if you were talking about a splash at the 3-4, there's a couple of names right there. Again, we're doing these in 2s. There are other names out there. By the way, there's going to be more players, quality guys going to the portal. We still have, almost a week, Tuesday, April 22nd, before it officially closes. But there's still quality guys going in. There'll be some more names that we might kick around. I've left some names out because, again, I'm trying to just limit it to 2 by 2 by 2 for a little bit here. Jameer Watkins down to 3. Okay, Kentucky, Louisville, or Illinois. I didn't see that. Did that just come out? Okay, so did we spin our wheels there? I missed that. I didn't see that. I've been looking around on him and asking about him. All right, so let's go back to 3-point shooting now. And I'm going to give one of each. I'm going to give a role player kind of guy and a guy that would be more of a splash, another McDonald's All-American. Ian Jackson. Let's start with him. That'd be the more splashy guy of a guy that brings you, he was 39.5% from 3 this year, made 60. So, nearly 2 per game. That's decent volume, 12 points per game. Kind of finished the season on a whimper in terms of his role and scoring, and had a big monster stretch there earlier in the year where he was multiple games of over 20 and really going off. But 12 points per game and a 39.5% 3-point shooter on good volume. Just rounded up, he's a 40% 3-point shooter. Was a freshman at North Carolina, and he's got that Calipari connection. Arkansas and Kentucky, when he made his decision as a junior, those were two of his top 5, and he ended up, obviously going to North Carolina. But Calipari, a lot of people thought Kentucky was next in line. Arkansas was in that Final 5 list, and he visited Arkansas in the middle of his junior high school season. So he's a guy that if people are saying, oh, it's got to be St. John's. Well, he went and visited EPM in Southern Cal first. Then it was St. John's. He's on Georgia's campus today. He's a guy that may be taking some more visits. Could he be the guy that's coming in either this week or next week? Is Ian Jackson in the mix? And maybe Arkansas gets his last visit. I'm not telling you I know something there. I'm telling you to keep an eye on it. If St. John's was the front runner, or even USC, they didn't get it done because he's still taking visits. Calipari doesn't. You don't see the guys that come and visit Arkansas out of the portal go on to the next visit. He locks it up. So if we ever get wind that Ian Jackson's coming to campus, it's probably a good sign that Calipari's about to close on it. Probably. Someone saying it's not correct. Kentucky, Illinois, and Louisville are the ones that made contact. Look, man, I haven't seen anything that says he's narrowed it down. That's why I brought it up. But on 2 or 3 of these, while more than that, a handful, while I'm talking about stuff, things are actually being tweeted and posted that change the narrative a little bit. Duke Miles committing to Virginia when I was talking about Duke Miles. He's since decommitted. I could have thrown his name in here, but I won't today. I brought it up, but just to make that point. But Ian Jackson, keeping on him, he would be a splash in the backcourt. And now you're saying, well, you didn't go after Lamar Wilkerson, and you didn't go after, Jerron Pierre Jr. You didn't go far with those guys. Well, Ian Jackson, there may be a reason for that. Maybe he's on a path to Arkansas, and Calipari does want to add another quality backcourt guy that could play at the 2 and bring some shooting that you just don't see as a proven concept in this backcourt via the combination of retention and 2 high school guys you're bringing in. Doesn't mean they won't be good enough or get better, but this is a guy that's done it already in 1 year of college. Maybe there's something there. Maybe there is a splash coming in the backcourt. It seems less likely because of the numbers and all the McDonald's All-Americans in that backcourt versus your front court and a 3-4 guy, but don't rule it out. Then a role type of player in the backcourt, since we're doing Cal's arc, here's the second name as a 3-point shooter I've been talking about the last few days, because in the last few days it's come out Arkansas reached out to him, Adam Miller. A 3-point shooter last year. I mentioned when I brought his name up, if you look at his career, started at Illinois, then he was at LSU, then the last 2 years at Arizona State. We spent time speaking on the fact that this guard, his first 3 seasons between those 3 schools in college, he was a low 30s to mid 30s 3-point shooter. This past year on lower volume, that's what I explained. A career low in volume, 4.4 3-point attempts, but a career high in efficiency at just over 43%. His percentage went way up this last year, but his volume did go down. And it went significantly down on the volume of takes between the previous 2 years. His freshman year, he was at 4.9 per game. So it's even less than that. So did he find a sweet spot on maybe better shot selection, and it's improved his percentage? You never know how it's going to translate, but it's a guy you're looking at as a potential guy for that. And he wouldn't be a splash guy. He's not been putting up, he's a career 10 points per game average. So it would be kind of in the same line of a Damian Collins or an Yenso in a sense, where he's not, you can maybe get him because he's always understood I'm a 3rd or 4th option, third at best probably. And then you can placate what you need there with the guys you have earmarked for your bigger roles and maybe make that work. So we went through a lot of names in that. Let's say that we've talked about the 2 splash guys at the 3-4 and why a splashy addition might make the most sense there. And then we threw out Ian Jackson, maybe keep an eye on that as a splash addition, as a 3-point shooter. Let's go back to 4-spot depth. Let's go back to the 4 and say, well, what about a backup for Brazil? What if you wanted to do that and you wanted to be kind of versatile? Well, they could be a 3-4, but they're not, major role kind of guys. And we've heard recently that Kamani Hamilton at a high point, 6'6", 6'7", 3-4 tweener, 13 points per game at high point, under 5 rebounds per game. I mean, he might be a guy that you might look to add for depth and on your at the 4. Another name, Dylan Mitchell, that's been out there, former 5-star guy, McDonald's All-American, played a couple of years at Texas, last year at Cincinnati, 10 points per game. He's a really good rebounder as well, but he's not a 3-point threat and not a 5-star that's found his way to the NBA. But another guy that's not an alpha at his position when you look at it with how you might be recruiting a veteran like that. So that's the non-splash 3-4 combo look at it. Just some names there. There are other names. A guy like Trayson Eaglestaff, who is a bomber, who just decommitted today from South Carolina. Kentucky, Kansas, Gonzaga. There's some other teams after him. I talked about him before as a guy that maybe Arkansas would look at, but he's not a traditional Cal kind of guy, except that he's a 3-point shooter. There's other ones out there. There's all kinds of names we could go through today right now, and some of them we have, but I kind of wanted to keep it 2 per how you want to look at it. 2 known Cal, Kentucky commodities on the front line. So then, now that we've done it that way, let's look at it a different way. Let's say you do add 3 more and that Artal and Sealy are not part of what you're expecting to use this year. Well, let's just give names. Let's say you went Onyenso to give you a 3rd big guy on the front line and be a shot blocker. It checks a box for a need based on what you have right now. Let's say you also added a Jameer Watkins or one of these backup types like a Kamani Hamilton or Dylan Mitchell to help you bolster your 4 depth, your 4-spot depth. Either, in these cases, kind of a 3-4 guy. If you were looking at a Dylan Mitchell or even a Damian Collins who could do 4-5, there's some other qualities there. So let's say Onyenso and one of those, that would be a second add, and then either an Ian Jackson or an Adam Miller type. So you've addressed 3-point shooting, shot blocking, and your front line depth, all of which we say, looking on what we've added right now, are important, could be important. But if you add 3 more with the 8 that you have, again, not counting Isaiah Sealy and Kareem Artal, that gets you to there. Technically have your numbers at 10, but we got them off the table. So you got 8 in the rotation, and you add 3. That means you expanded a 9 rotation to 11 on your on guys that can help. And the only question marks I have is at least 2 of those guys are going to be very unhappy. They're going to be at least 2 of those guys unhappy. And plus, you've also got, Artal and Sealy in that scenario as your 12th and 13th guys. And so there's a way to look at it. The other way to look at it is maybe Arkansas is only going to add 1 more guy because they are going to look at a guy like Artal and Sealy as just emergent. They're there. And if we need beyond a top 9 rotation, we'll use one of those guys. And we feel good they can do it. Remember, they are significantly status-wise, what they bring resume-wise, far advanced relative to what Arkansas did with the others outside the top 9 last year. So I don't know what Calipari's vision is just yet. And we don't know by the portal moves just yet until maybe the next 1, 2, or 3 editions, and we'll start figuring some of that out. That's kind of the point. So I wanted to walk through all that. Now, 38, almost 39 minutes in. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I'm Kevin McPherson. There is more than one way to skin a cat. And here's another way you might skin a cat. And we'll just consider this for a little bit. This is the intel I have for you today. Tyron Stokes, the number 1 player in the country in the 2026 class. We've talked a little bit about it. The news came out. Some of the folks I talked to that cover recruiting on a national level, he's not going to play spring and summer grassroots. Well, that would have been his last year. One of the reasons you might do that and shelf it is because you already know what you want to do, or you're trying to figure that out time to maybe reclass. It's a possibility. If you source information I have, if you look at the family, his mom, they think they want him to stick with his class, 2026. He's not an older guy where he, got held back and really he should be. No, he's a 2026 guy. But there are other people with influence in his situation, especially basketball thinkers, that think this is a real possibility that he reclasses. And he's taken visits. He visited Louisville a while back. That's where he's from. He'd already taken a visit to Louisville. He's got one planned to Kansas. Well, the intel is he's looking to take as many as 3 more in addition to Kansas visits soon. I don't know what soon means. He's got time on his hands. The spring and summer grassroots stuff's ramping up now. Teams are practicing. They're already taking part in events. We've had him here locally. He ain't doing that. He's going to work out, and so he's got the ability to visit where he wants to visit. And so just talking to folks outside of this planned in public named Kansas visit, some of the usual names that keep popping up are Kentucky, Arkansas, and BYU. Well, Calipari has been out to see him on all kinds of platforms during spring and summer on the Nike EYBL circuit. When he played for the Oakland Soldiers on the Nike circuit last year. So out to see him for those events. Out to see him at Notre Dame High School out in LA, going out to see him there when that September period opened up. Saw him play overseas with Team USA. Calipari has been recruiting him. So it makes sense. We know Calipari recruits the top level 5 stars. They're all top level, but he goes after, they're not a big name that he's bashful from, and he's landed his share of them. So it makes all kinds of sense why maybe Arkansas could be in the mix there. I just talked about Calipari's the kind of guy that adds really good players late that fall into his lap, or it just works out. So we may not see all the moves for a while because of stuff that's going on behind the scenes. Does Arkansas get Tyron Stokes on campus? Is he the guy that's coming in this week before he go that planned Kansas visit, or later, sometime later? Tyron Stokes, keep an eye on it, especially if Calipari thinks he can get him to reclass. Remember, Calipari loves that kind of stuff. That's in his wheelhouse. They tried to do it with Will Riley. Arkansas tried to get in the mix on that. Calipari hadn't been on the job very long, and Riley ends up in Illinois. By the way, he's announced he's declared for the NBA draft, Will Riley, after his freshman season in Illinois. And just circling back to Ian Jackson for a second, on the St. John's front, Rick Pitino, I meant to mention this before when we talked to Ian Jackson and forgot. I'm glad I thought about it. But St. John's just added a transfer guard from Stanford, positionally, similar to Ian Jackson, Ozzie Sellers, a double-figure scorer and a guy that's, again, so that's not to say they're not still after Jackson, but that could be a response, a guy they were holding off on. The Jackson visit happened. Now he's at Georgia. You just don't know. You don't know. But it's interesting that Ozzie Sellers now out of Stanford's off to a backcourt player off to St. John's. So we just keep our eyes on these things. What could it be? But that kind of really is what I wanted to go through today. Keep your eyes open. Look what happens here. Do they expand to a true 11 rotation, and Sealy and Rotal are not part of that? If they do, that means they've got 8 guys right now, assuming their retention sticks like we think it's trending, and knowing that Acuff and Malik Thomas are coming in soon, and now you got your 2 big men, that's 8. You go to a true 11 from 9 to 11, and Sealy and Rotal aren't part of that, you're looking for as many as 3 more. And Nate Ament could still possibly be one that's not out of the portal. Is it Tyron Stokes, someone that maybe added that's not part of the portal? Is it another guy you have to wait on that's also in the NBA draft? Is there a splash? Are there guys connected to Cal and Kentucky that can help you in areas of need? I mean, we covered all of that. So before I sign off, I'm going to say again, thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I'm Kevin McPherson. Please hit subscribe, like, and share. Hit the notifications because we're going to jump back on if anything breaks, especially when we hear about this next visit or anything else moving and shaking with this, with where Arkansas is trying to go to finish this up. They're not done yet. I don't see that. I don't believe that. But I wouldn't be shocked if for some reason they talk themselves into it. All right, and before I do sign off, I know I just kind of said goodbye. I want to tip of the hat cap now to the Pro Hogs. We're getting into the NBA playoffs. Regular season's over. You got playing games. You got several pro Hogs. I watched the 2 that played last night. I'll be watching Gaffer tonight in Dallas against the Sacramento Kings in the 8-9 slot. But kudos to Anthony Black and the monster game he had off the bench. That game, it was early. He checks in, early first quarter, tight game. He starts immediately making an impact. He had a possession where he had a putback Then on the other end, he blocks Trae Young's shot, an NBA All-Star, blocks his shot. And then in transition, he gets a pull-up three. So he had 5 points and a block shot and a run that effectively extended that game out and built up a lead for Orlando. The Magic end up winning big, but he had a game-high box score plus 34 points, 16 points, 6 of 7 from the field, 3 of 3 from three. He split his 2 free throws, 1 of 2 there, but just had an outstanding game. A couple of blocks, I mentioned that. And so I think he also had 4 rebounds and 4 assists, but that box score plus 34 is a game high. They were just better when he was on the court. And this is nut cutting time, man. This is the most important game of his career. Because if you lose that game, yeah, because of their position where they finished record wise, they still would have had another play-in game against the winner of the 8-9 matchup that plays tonight in the Eastern Conference. But you want to win that and make it a done deal. Now they move on. Orlando does, and they're as the 7th seed now. And so they do get the Boston Celtics, the defending, NBA Finals champion in the team, even though it finished second in the Eastern Conference record-wise, and I think the third best record overall in the NBA. They're still the odds-on favorite to win another title, but it'll be a great learning experience for AB and then a young Orlando team. And who knows? Maybe they'll shock the world. But he had a great game. That's how you want to start postseason in this no man's land play-in situation where you got to. They got their win and they're off to the playoffs. Same with Moses Moody, same scenarios. Win and you're in. You don't have to win 2 to get in like some of these play-in teams. And Moody had a really solid game. He's been starting, 30 plus games in a row now for Golden State. They've made a real push at the end of the year. Really one of the top teams in the NBA since the All-Star break. Everybody knows what the history is there in the dynasty. He's already got an NBA title as a rookie in Golden State. So he's been playing with great players. But, man, he has become a really good defender. He's constantly – I have the league pass. I watch all these pro Hogs, watch every game they play. And he's been defending consistently the other team's top backcourt player. Last night it was Ja Morant. And, Morant had an injury mid-game, came back. Morant got some of his. But usually what Morant did well was after the screen game to get Moody off, to force Moody to switch so that he hadn't have to deal with Moody. Moody's length and strength and his now fourth year, understanding of the game. Guys like him and Isaiah Joe constantly know where to be. You don't look at them as elite athletes necessarily, or guys that are wowing you with some of the stuff they can do to even recover from a bad play. But Moses has got a 7'1" wingspan. He's got broad shoulders. He's a strong dude, and he does a really job of defending the other team's best players. But 9 points last night, 4 of 7 from the field, made huge plays in this game all over the place, including some lockdown possessions against Ja Morant, who's one of the most talented, explosive guards you're going to find out there. He's a problem to try to stop. So Moody did a really good job. He had a big play at the end of the game where, he helped Golden State jump out to a 20-point lead. That dissolved, and then late in the game, fourth quarter, it was back and forth. Both teams held in slight leads, and Moses had a putback, an offensive rebound putback, to, I think, give Golden State the lead again. And he also had a nice assist on a play during that same stretch where he got the defense to converge and saw a guy cutting and got an assist. So it's just the little things. He has always played the right way. He and Isaiah Joe are the most low-maintenance players you'll ever have for a coach. And they just learn and it's not about them. It's about winning. And so you love to see Moses Moody and Anthony Black in these situations and helping their team. So both of those are playoff teams now. Moody and Golden State are now as the 7th seed in the playoffs. We'll get the 2 seed Houston Rockets. I think Golden State's got a real chance to win that series. Not so sure about Orlando against Boston. I think Boston's probably going to survive the first round, but again, there they are. Gafford tonight, he missed a lot of games injured with knee injury. He's been back late in the regular season doing what he does. They've got a log jam now with Anthony Davis and Derek Lively on that front line, but Gafford still produces and still gets his minutes. There's a lot of question marks with Dallas, though, in the backcourt and some of the other stuff. They're the number 9 in the play-in, so they've got to travel to Sacramento So if they lose, they're done. That's it. No more opportunities. And the winner of this game still has to play Memphis, and that's who Golden State beat last night, the Memphis Grizzlies. So we're going to keep an eye on Gafford. And then we have the joy when the playoffs start this weekend. Isaiah Joe, Jalen Williams, and the Western Division champion again. When you look at the regular season being the 1 seed in the Oklahoma City Thunder, Bobby Portis is back playing well at the end of the year, and Milwaukee's got a real chance here, especially if they can get Dame Lillard back. Portis makes them better at both ends of the court, and it really showed up once he returned. And so Milwaukee's already in the playoffs. And then let's leave out, as we say goodbye for real, 50 minutes in, a shout out to Mason Jones, named the NBA G League Finals MVP, playing with the Stockton Kings. He's made a few brief appearances this year as a two-way player with the Sacramento Kings. Didn't get to play a lot in the NBA, but he's been mostly a G League guy, and he's put up great numbers and been first team all G League and all that prior. But man, getting that NBA G League Finals MVP, that's really cool. That happened the last couple of days. So a shout out to Mace. I really am signing off now. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I'm Kevin McPherson. Until we break in quickly for something crazy happening, or until I'm on sometime tomorrow. Thanks for being here. We'll see you then.